Thanks to Raycon for sponsoring today's video.
Hey all you lovebirds, yeah, I'm talking to the couple behind you there. It's close to Valentine's Day and Raycon's everyday earbuds that look, feel, and sound better than ever would make a great gift. And with their optimized gel tips giving you the perfect comfortable fit for your ears, they ain't falling off your head anytime soon. Over 8 hours of playtime, 32-hour total battery life thanks to the rechargeable carrying case, and they're about half the price of other premium audio brands. The everyday earbuds have over 48,000 5-star reviews for a reason, and why they're my go-to choice for workout and yoga sessions. Just don't let your cats near them. And Raycon, as always, is offering my viewers a great deal. Click the link in the description below or go to buyraycon.com/somecallmejohnny to save 15% off your next Raycon purchase. These wouldn't be possible without your continuous support for this channel, so thank you, as always. Let's continue on with the show.
Ooh, surprise! Some of you might be thinking, oh, I thought Final Fantasy VII was going to be in the next video. And it's on the way. You won't be waiting that long for that one. But here's the thing. Final Fantasy VI wiped me the fuck out. I am immensely happy over the response to that video. How I was finally able to usurp Sonic 06 as the longest review I've written for this channel so far. But after that, I was like, man, I need a break. I gotta take it easy because who knows, the Final Fantasy VII video can easily just be as beefy, but that remains to be seen. And then I thought, well, you know what? I've got a few impatient Resident Evil fans wondering when I was going to head back to the Resident Evil series after the Resident Evil 4 video. And holy shit, some of you impatient dipshits are the whiniest bunch of fucks I've ever encountered. Like, forget Sonic. I learned out of the previous marathon, you don't blue ball a Resident Evil fan. Now, obviously, I am overgeneralizing there. If you're getting angry at what I'm saying, hi, you're exactly who I'm talking about. Thank you for coming on board. But look, guys, here's the thing. Sometimes I don't feel like covering an entire series of games in one fell swoop for one marathon. I want to take a break. Sometimes I don't look at every game in the series because I just don't feel like it. But that's changing today because I suddenly got the hankering to return to the mainline series as of late. And though I didn't mention covering it in that direct video I made some time ago, I like to keep you guys on your toes every once in a while, throw a few curveballs there, keep you guys guessing what exactly is coming up in that Versus playlist. And what was really encouraging that this game was up next, and it was one I was immensely hyped for. When Resident Evil 5 was first making the rounds through news sites and publications, I was already like hundreds of hours into my Resident Evil 4 playtime on GameCube, PS2, and the Wii, and by this point I was already finished my first visit through the other games because, like I said, Resident Evil 4 convinced me to give the older games a shot because I loved it that much. I was a Resident Evil fan now, and seeing that the next game was bringing back series veteran Chris Redfield from the first game in Code Veronica, it looks like I made the right decision to visit the older games when I did. But holy shit, I wasn't aware that fighting a zombie attack in one mansion and making a trip to Europe was like the world's greatest workout regimen, because Chris is fucking stacked now, dude. Holy hell, what a beefcake. But the moment I saw the over-the-shoulder camera return, though, I was super excited because, alright, it looks like we're getting a Resident Evil 4 that's gonna look a lot prettier. And though we're close to 13 years from its initial release on Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, Resident Evil 5 still looks incredible. Some of the environments are noticeably lower res with advances in technology throughout the last decade, and I'll be the first to say at 60 FPS with the later releases, something about it looks and feels off. I still think the game performs better in its original 30 FPS, but the character models and cinematography is still A+. Aside from the letterboxing, I get they wanted to give the game a motion picture feel, but sometimes it just makes the picture look squished, and it's even more noticeable when you have the subtitles on, because the subtitles are on the picture and not in the letterbox itself. It's like, come on guys, that shit should have been common sense. Whenever you get the chance, you should check out the behind the scenes stuff, because they went the extra mile in motion and facial capture. You think they were making a Devil May Cry instead of a Resident Evil. Resident Evil 5 was also the first game to use a virtual camera system, allowing the devs to see character animations completed in real time during motion capture. Shoutouts to Karen Dyer, who not only voiced newcomer Sheva Alomar for this game, but also performed all her motion capture stunts, using her training as a former circus performer. Alan Groves also performed similar feats, and I love his performance as Ricardo Irvin, one of the game's villains. The dude's a ham and ends up being one of the more memorable Resident Evil villains in my opinion, but not as memorable, I'm sorry Mr. Groves, as DC Douglas voicing Albert Wesker for this game. I know he already made his vocal debut as the character in Umbrella Chronicles, the rail shooter originally released for the Nintendo Wii, but Resident Evil 5 is what I associate him with the most, and it's like, this is the voice I think of whenever Wesker is on the mind.
Your future hinges upon this fight.
A succulent combination of cheese and suavity. He's a man with a plan and a role DC Douglas clearly loves doing, because for years he's been having fun with the role in all manner of shit. You should check out his YouTube channel and social media to see what I mean.
Though I'd be remiss as a Sonic fan not to mention Roger Craig Smith, who's now voicing Chris Redfield for this in future games. And he's my personal favorite Chris to boot, though Ruben Langdon will be responsible for Chris's motion capture. A damn good job at it too. Honestly, all the voice acting in this game is great, like genuinely great. We're so far removed from the B-movie origins of the original 1996 game. Resident Evil was now a certified blockbuster franchise, especially after the massive success of Resident Evil 4. And that success would change the landscape and help inspire other games. By Resident Evil 5's creation, we now had franchises like Epic Games' Gears of War, we had games like EA's Dead Space, games directly inspired by what Resident Evil 4 brought. It was the beginning of a paradigm shift for the Resident Evil series, where now it wasn't so much about the horror element, but rather focusing on what people enjoyed from last time and ramping it up for not only a new generation, but still making its mark in a climate that was now thriving thanks to earlier endeavors. So what we have here is a Resident Evil game that, now more than ever, is more about suspenseful action rather than straight horror. And I have to agree with some, while this game continues to focus on some disturbing elements that the series has always relished in, it is by no means a horror game. It's not even that scary. And while I will argue this has been slowly becoming the case since Code Veronica, it is at its most apparent here. The Las Plagas from Resident Evil 4 makes a return as the main source of grief for this, but it's gotten a bit of an upgrade. We got bad guys on motorbikes now. There's a couple of auto-scroller sequences where you're on a Jeep mowing down baddies on motorcycles. They can ride bikes now. There's just so many explosive action pieces in this game. There's even times where you can take cover and pop baddies from safe grounds, emulating the very games the series would help inspire. And it doesn't emulate it very well, if you ask me. It's kind of jank.
Back in the late 2000s, man, I didn't really care that it was ramping up all the action. I was just looking forward to getting my hands on this sequel to what was becoming one of my favorite games of all time. And you can bet your ass I put a lot of time into this game.
Again, the hype was real for this one. I was following updates when I could. Through the game's first trailer, I remember this fake blog site chronicling some dude's venture in the village that would later get infected. It was a fun way of getting immersed before the game was even released. When things were looking a little murky with the initial allegations of racism, that was the thing. You got mighty whitey Chris Redfield at the heart of Africa against a whole bunch of infected civilians, and on the surface, yeah, I get why that might seem problematic, but I always did find that kind of silly because, hey, guess what? Africa has black people, guys. I don't know. Did Spaniards give Resident Evil 4 this much shit when that was making the rounds? It got to a point where folks thought Sheva Alomar, Chris's partner for this game, was created to alleviate accusations of said racism. But Karen Dyer would later confirm no, Sheva was always a planned part of the game, and I believe that. There's a big focus on camaraderie in Resident Evil 5 through the multiple pairings of different characters, not to mention the game's co-op, which we'll get into later. I don't think Sheva was created for damage control, and the initial accusations were overblown. However, the whole tribal village part where the Plagas caused the civilians to, in a way, regress and don ancient attire of their ancestors. Look, I got nothing for that one. That's just a big yikes. What the fuck was the idea behind this? Dear God.
That aside, I was so excited to finally get my hands on Resident Evil 5. I went to the midnight release for it, and on that night, I played until the sun came up. In total, I wouldn't play it as much as Resident Evil 4. In fact, I'll say now, comparing the two, especially after going back for this video, it doesn't beat 4 in both gameplay and story. In fact, let's jump into the story real quick.
So Resident Evil 5 sees the return of former STARS agent Chris Redfield, now a member of the Bioterrorism Security Assessment Alliance, or the BSAA for short, an organization dedicated to thwarting bioterrorist attacks across the globe, which is still seeing its fair share of action, even in a world where the Umbrella Corporation folded off-screen. Along with newly assigned partner Sheva Alomar, Chris finds himself in the heart of Africa to apprehend Ricardo Irvin, a known black market dealer that sells BOWs to the highest bidder. However, they soon discover that the residents of the village have been infected by a new strain of Las Plagas from the last game, and that there's also a new BOW making the rounds, later known as Ouroboros, that manages to get the Alpha team of the BSAA killed, including Kirk, who made the grave error of being a helicopter pilot in a Resident Evil game. Essentially going at this alone now because the BSAA really want to capture Irvin, safety for the other crew be damned, Chris and Sheva head deeper into dangerous territory to catch up to Irvin, fighting all manner of BOWs during the journey, including Irvin, who later injects himself with the Plagas to fight off the duo, but that doesn't end so well with him. Things get a little more personal for Chris, though, when he discovers that his old partner, Jill Valentine, might still be alive after she was presumed dead during an unsuccessful attempt at apprehending Oswald E. Spencer years prior. Yeah, so remember that Spencer dude I briefly talked about in Code Veronica? Kind of the entire reason Umbrella exists at all, and is the, progenitor of this whole thing, so to speak. We finally get his motivation behind everything, and it's pretty vanilla. He wanted to advance human evolution to the next stage with him acting as the new god for it all. He would then later create this Wesker project to test out his progenitor virus he discovered in Africa to see how it could help expedite his plans, which led to the creation of a bunch of kids with the surname of Wesker, one of them of course being Albert Wesker, who would eventually locate Spencer's whereabouts and murder the bastard with his newfound powers he's gotten since Code Veronica. Wesker would then claim Spencer's goals for his own, wanting to become a god that rules over all. Chris and Jill were unfortunately caught in the middle of Wesker's new revelation, and they get their shit pushed in big time, with Jill managing to temporarily thwart Wesker by sending him off a cliff. But you know how it works in these stories. If there isn't a body, there isn't a corpse. And you know damn well people wouldn't accept the death of a beloved Resident Evil character happening off-screen in a flashback, no less. So of course Jill is still alive, and is now being mind-controlled by Wesker in a twist that really, even if you never played a Resident Evil game beforehand, it's so sloppily foreshadowed it loses any impact it should have had. Wesker, along with the aid of Excellegione, the head of the African division of Tricell, the not umbrella of this game, who Wesker predictably kills later because he's already got the hots for Chris. I mean, have you seen those arms? Plans on using the new Ouroboros BOW to infect the world and, in his eyes, chaff out the weak so that only the strong survive. The classic Darwinish spiel that even for Resident Evil is a little bland by now, but again, it does help that DC Douglas just chews up the fucking scenery and make it all fun. With some dedicated teamwork, Chris and Sheva managed to free Jill from Wesker's control, and thanks to her elaborating on the source of Wesker's power, being a virus that Wesker needs to inject regularly like a vitamin supplement, Chris and Sheva overload Wesker with the good shit, allowing them to get the upper hand on evil Johnny Bravo, culminating with a climactic encounter inside a stealth bomber that Wesker planned on using to spread Ouroboros with. In the ensuing scuffle, the bomber ends up crashing, and our climax ends in an active volcano. Even for Resident Evil, this... What? Everyone here should be dead just being in here, especially Ouroboros, because the game makes it a thing to point out multiple times earlier that it has a weakness to fire. We're in a fucking volcano and suddenly it's nothing? Must be Wesker's sexual charisma. Anyway, a big fight occurs, Chris punches a rock a couple of times, and then you knife the shit out of Wesker to deliver the coup de grace, which isn't really the coup de grace. That would be the 2 rockets Chris and Sheva deliver to Wesker to end Resident Evil 5. Like Resident Evil 4, this game is not at all afraid to get ridiculous, as you can see, but where it falls flat is the lack of self-awareness that Resident Evil 4 had. It has about as much sensational elements as RE4, but the story is played straight, and despite some entertaining villains and some quirky bits, it doesn't come off as fun or goofy. Chris isn't as cool-headed as Leon, given the emotional stake he has in this thanks to the whole thing with Jill, but he doesn't make up for it besides, bringing the muscle. And Sheva, she's just kinda here to give Chris backup and point out the painfully obvious. You don't even learn anything significant about her without reading the game's supplementary files in the game's main menu. And as far as I'm aware, this is the only game where she's a thing, so it just makes her feel like a glorified background character with no real sense of agency that might just be here for eye candy. I mean, she's literally introduced with an ass shot, and gets some questionably risque costumes for future playthroughs. None of them beats Mad Max Chris though. Step on my nutsack harder, you untamed buffalo. After Resident Evil 4 did its own thing, Resident Evil 5 was the series' attempt at heading back to the main story involving Umbrella and its aftermath. But with Umbrella now defunct though because of Resident Evil 4, that sort of just leaves everything involving the previous cast and Wesker in an awkward sort of limbo. Umbrella was the center of everything in the previous games, and then it's taken care of off screen, just like Spencer in a manner of speaking, so much for that dangling thread, and they go and make another Umbrella in the form of Tricell since the dissolution of Umbrella created a vacuum likely, but that's all quickly brushed aside when Wesker decides, now I'm going to give everybody worms. And now we're on like global levels of pandemic shit, and no longer confined to an infected city here and there. Tricell was just a means to an end basically, and I guess that was always the idea behind Wesker's motivations in past games, but it does make the culmination of all of this feel haphazard given how quickly things escalate. So clearly I don't enjoy the story as much, but that doesn't negate all the good times I had with this anyway because god, the over-the-shoulder gameplay was back, all the cool things I can do with Resident Evil 4 was back, the controls were still tanky and I couldn't move and shoot at the same time, but that also meant I could just jump into this son of a bitch just fine. When the initial demo of this leaked online, I had that shit burned on a CD and played it on my Xbox 360 the first chance I got, and I remember unplugging my 360 from the internet because I wasn't sure if I was risking getting my account banned. It was a simpler time back then. Nothing ended up happening. I was just paranoid. On my original 360 profile, I maxed everything out. I got all the achievements, I unlocked every weapon, got infinite ammo for all of them, got all those medallions, played the shit out of the Mercenaries mode, and later releases include the Mercenaries reunion with extra characters that I would also later max out on. I went through the entire game front to back more times I could count, both solo and with co-op. That was the big thing with Resident Evil 5, co-op, and not in the Resident Evil 0 way, but with an actual buddy, both local and online. Local co-op I would not recommend, because unless you had a large TV, and I'm talking like a fucking projector, this game's method of split screen, well shit, that's just it wasn't a split screen, it was 2 screens crunched next to each other so that both players technically didn't lose anything, but you needed a magnifying glass to see shit worth a damn.
However, 2 people could also utilize the system link and play local co-op through like a LAN connection. That way both players have a dedicated TV for themselves. That's how Mark and I played the game all the damn time growing up with it, and we played this shit out of the game like that. Online co-op was also a thing, and against my better judgment, I did play a lot of this game online with randoms as I was racking up the treasures and money to unlock additional guns. But you know what? 9 times out of 10, it was a comfortable experience. I even remember this one kid I helped play through the entire game because it was their first Resident Evil experience, and afterwards he thanked me and I told him to go play the other games, and yeah, I'm pretty sure I made Capcom some extra change there, so you're welcome, by the way. I accept cash. Co-op is, for better and worse, the thing that defines Resident Evil 5. It's what makes it as fun as Resident Evil 4. Not better, but as fun, but it's also what makes it a step back from Resident Evil 4 when considering the solo experience. You're in control of Chris and Sheva for this game. Though strangely, you can't even play as Sheva as the lead character until you beat the game once, and I always found that odd. Whoever you're not playing as will be controlled through the AI through the entire game. And listen, they're a great shot, they really are. Fuck, give them a sniper rifle, and every bullet is basically a kill shot. It's great. But they have no sense of conservation. Take a bit of damage, they might pop that green herb mixture you've been saving. If they got ammo in any capacity, they will run that shit dry until that number says 0, even if you have them in a cover stance. You can change their tactics to be more reserved, except that doesn't really work. They will still just blow everything they got. Playing this game solo, you are effectively managing 2 characters instead of 1, and it has almost all the trappings I complained about in Resident Evil 0, especially since they got rid of the attaché case from Resident Evil 4. The best thing about that game, instead they gave us this rigid 3x3 grid inventory which is stupidly small, fills up fast, and you can't upgrade it in any capacity. True, you technically have 2 characters to shuffle things around with, but that's just it. A good part of this game can easily become a game of inventory Tetris. And not in a fun way like Resident Evil 4, but more like, fuck man, I'm already out of space, so I don't know, I guess I can throw these eggs at Wesker. It's the little things like this in solo that add up and can make the journey more tedious than what you might expect. Inventory management is also handled in real time in this game, and this was mainly so that players couldn't pause the game in co-op sessions that potentially make things awkward, but this means you gotta be quick on your toes to manage your items in combat if it comes to that, or combine herbs for extra healing if you need it, or reload weapons on the fly, which to the game's credit, nothing feels better than reloading your gun through the inventory while you're busy climbing a ladder or some other shit. It keeps the gameplay snappy, and that's what I really like about RE5's gameplay, it's snappy. In its entirety, I don't think the campaign is as strong as the last game, as much as I played it back then. I was caught off guard a couple of times during this revisit where I went, alright, I completely forgot about this area. The game looks gorgeous, a little muted and piss flavored, but gorgeous, but nothing is as visually striking as the European setting. Not even when we head to the marshlands, just a bunch of exotic wood with prick alligators. I also forgot, they sure just repeated the same military beats from RE4 again here during the last chunk of the game, didn't they? Previous games always had a formula how most of them ended in a lab of some sort, but I think this blatant repeat is just because of how successful RE4 was. The whole Legends of the Hidden Temple section is just a clumsy way of paying homage to the game's roots and solving puzzles and the like. There are barely any puzzles in this game at all, likely again because of the co-op nature of gameplay. You wouldn't want to watch someone fumble through the water meter puzzle, you know what I mean? No, it's a very linear, streamlined experience that is heavy on the action and less on exploration and atmosphere. You're still rewarded for checking every nook and cranny, extra ammo, a completely new weapon that you can either sell or upgrade, or treasure that brings in the dough. However, you can't combine treasures in this game to make larger treasures, and that was one of the fun things about exploring in the previous game that's lacking here. There are no typewriters to save progress. Instead, the game will just autosave after every checkpoint. And between chapters or after every death, you're given a chance to change your weapon payload and spend money you earn from kills or exploration on new weapons and upgrades. The charm of the merchant is sorely missing though. I like the straightforwardness of this, but it's considerably colder and more sterile. At the very least, you're not playing escort this go around. No, both characters can defend themselves just fine with weapons and melee attacks that can lay on the damage like before. There are even new follow-up attacks you can perform after your buddy lays on the initial hit that can decimate whatever is on the receiving end, saving you on resources. Really, the worst thing that comes from the buddy system is the couple of times you're forcibly split up and you have to defend each other, but it's like, both characters still got their weapons and shit, so you just keep playing as you normally would. And unlike Resident Evil 4, there's no yellow herbs to max out your health. Both characters start with a full health bar, giving you one less thing to factor in when playing. And unless you're playing in the very unfun professional difficulty where everything basically one-shots you and I hate it, I think this game is pretty comfortable. Obviously, some enemies will knock your ass down fast, like the returning lickers the game unapologetically spams in one chapter later on, or the godforsaken reapers that can insta-kill you if they get too close. God, I hate these things. Everything else, though, can be handled like all the Ganados in Resident Evil 4. You kneecap them, give them a good melee, then you knife the body to save on ammo so that you can save the big guns for the larger goons you run into later, like the MMA fighter or the Gatling bros with refrigerators on their backs. The Executioner, who seems very out of place given the context of everything else you face later in this game. It's getting less Resident Evil and more like a classic 90s beat-em-up given the escalation of baddies
baddies you end up facing. Resident Evil 5 lives and dies with its co-op. It's still a great time by yourself, you just have to deal with a very unconservative AI buddy. But you know, it's clear it's meant to be enjoyed with a human companion, which for this revisit I did end up doing, and I want to take this time to thank my friend Eric for joining me for this journey. Playing co-op with him took me back to all the great times I had with this game back in the day, and I like that warm fuzzy feeling, dictating who gets what ammo drops, who's going to be Lantern Bitch for the mines, who's going to hold the sniper rifle, who gets to handle the flamethrower for the second Ouroboros fight until you realize that the 60 FPS upgrade makes this fight fucking impossible, so you puss out and buy the rocket launcher and one-shot the motherfucker. Mercenaries is a fucking blast with co-op, splitting up and racking up kills and getting time bonuses to get the big numbers. So much fun. Fuck the versus mode though. PvP does not work with this sort of combat system, though that could just be me being salty for not finding the Magnum before Eric did. The extra DLC chapters are also fun with co-op, to some extent. Later on, the game would get Desperate Escape and Lost in Nightmare. Desperate Escape chronicles Jill's venture with Captain Josh of the BSAA's Delta team as they get a chopper ready to help Christian Sheva in the finale. Josh is someone you meet up with in the main campaign that helps Christian Sheva find Irvin. He's one of the better side characters that I wish had more screen time. And this DLC chapter does rectify this issue somewhat, but the content within the package leaves a little to be desired. It's just a bunch of shit thrown at you with limited resources, and by the end of it, it's like, what, a 5-minute gauntlet against a horde of baddies that you have to survive until your helicopter pilot Doug arrives to save you? Which ends up getting Doug killed because he committed the cardinal sin of being a helicopter pilot in a Resident Evil game. Rest in pieces, Doug. Lost in Nightmare is a love letter to the original Resident Evil. It takes place during the flashback where Chris and Jill tried to apprehend Spencer, but you're mainly exploring a mansion that borrows a lot from the Archelay mansion in Resident Evil 1. You can even interact with this door a couple of times to get the classic camera angles from the old games. This is a great add-on. I think it manages to reach a good balance between the old school horror of the previous games while keeping the over-the-shoulder action intact from Resident Evil 4. My friend Eric never played this until this recording, and it was fun hearing his real-time reactions as the game delivered some good scares. It's just too short for its own good. You can beat this in less than an hour, and the encounter against Wesker at the end is a little clunky in execution, given your lack of resources. You're meant to lose this fight because of story reasons, but you can die well before that happens when Wesker kicks your buddy across the fucking room. This game is a blast with a friend. Again, in that regard, I love it as much as Resident Evil 4. But I know not everyone is down with playing with a friend or some random online. They'd rather play it alone on their own time. And that's why it falls short on being a perfect follow-up to one of my favorite games of all time. Still, it's damn fun, I still recommend it heavily, so go on and get it. On consoles if you can, like the Gold Edition for PS4 and Xbox One. There is a PC release, and it's what I played for this video to make recording sessions easier, but originally it was released for the now-defunct Games for Windows Live service, and nowadays without downloading the necessary fixes, the game will just refuse to run, even after upgrading it to the Gold Edition via Steam. It requires some not-so-obvious workaround, even then it's still not perfect because the game will just randomly stop reading my controller inputs and forcibly switch me to keyboard and mouse, and it was the most fucking irritating thing about recording this game, so yeah. Get it on consoles, please.
So I'm going to head back to Final Fantasy and work on that last video before I decide to give the next mainline Resident Evil a go. And that video should be pretty interesting because Resident Evil 6 is one I remember not having the best memories of. But it's been so long since I last played it, so who knows, that might change, just like my initial opinions on Resident Evil 3 was back then. So, as always, thank you all for watching. Stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask if you decide to go outside, get vaccinated if possible. Have yourselves a fantastic night, and take care.